Welcome back to the class, everyone. Today we're going to be continuing with our theme of ranking Zetas. We've gone over the top 10 best leadership and unique Zetas, and now it's time we touched on the specials. I won't lie, this was a little bit easier. I know we got a lot of comments in our last two videos of leaderships or uniques that we left out just because they didn't make the top 10 cut. This was a lot easier to do this time because there just aren't that many special Zetas, or there just aren't that many relevant special Zetas. But without further ado, let's get into this, and these are not in any particular order, so we're not sitting here saying that Vader's Merciless Massacre is better than Jolie's, I guess that hurts or whatever it's called. Although that is true, but they're not ranked in that specific way, but they are just the top 10. So first up is going to be Darth Vader's. This is a little awkward because we got a comment actually on our last video that said it was wild that we didn't include this. But as you can see, this is specifically labeled a special, so that means it has to go in the special Zeta category. And I don't even really think I need to say anything about this. If you don't have the Zeta, I'm not sure what you're doing. This might even be the first Zeta that you ever get for a team, because it allows Vader at a beginner level to essentially start taking out entire teams on his own. And then in the end game, this is the only reason he's really still relevant. All enemies gain merciless target. Basically what this is going to do is it's going to give him the option to hit every single target. And not only can he do that with a basic or one of his other specials, but he's going to be reducing the cooldowns of his other specials as well, so that he can get back around to his Coin Blade, so that he can get back around to his Force Crush. And it also makes him immune to fear, stun, and a bunch of other stuff that people can do to him while he's going around whacking everyone with his basic. He also gets massive buffs, but those buffs aren't actually tied to the Zeta itself. You get those before, but the Zeta is what allows you to get your 6 turns or whatever it is more than you would get if you just got this. So overall, I know we said we weren't ranking them individually, but it's the best special Zeta in the entire game. You have to have it. You want to get as much bang for your buck out of Vader as you can, and you probably do. Next up is going to be Jolie. This one revolutionized the Jedi Knight Revan team way back in its heyday, and is still relevant on JML versus JMK. So whether you're beginning, mid, or end game, this is the Zeta that is still pretty important, and it is also a special Zeta. That looks pretty bad. That's what it was called. Dispel all debuffs. That happens no matter what on target ally, and they recover 40% health. But what really comes in handy when you put the Zeta on is add revive to all defeated Jedi allies at 80% health for crit immunity for 5 turns. This is good for a number of reasons. Revives within themselves are really annoying, but on top of that, they're coming back with 80% health, so you can't just knock them back down instantly again, and crit immunity. So not only are they going to have a lot of health, but they're going to be hard to immediately take down. This just synergizes really nice with Jolie's kit, because he is really hard to kill. If you start looking through everything that he has a bunch of max health. He also gets a bunch of crit avoidance from his tenacity. So in general, he's just hard to kill. And when you have a tanky unit like this that is able to come in and revive all of the other characters, it just adds a lot of depth to what he can do. And especially in 5v5, when he's the last one standing and then you revive 4 characters, one of which is a galactic legend, it can turn a lot of matches around. So Jolie definitely gets a spot in the top 10 for specials. Next up is going to be Gideon. This is going to be a little bit more niche. While you don't need this for Gideon to function in every team that he's going to be in, sometimes he's just useful for being an armor shred, or he's useful for putting demoralize, or he's useful because he's able to go first and get troopers turn meter started. That being said, if you ever want to even play around with the idea of him going with Padme so that Padme can get 20 stacks of courage right off the bat, you do have to have the special here where he's going to give 100% protection up to all support allies. For those of you who are unaware, in 3v3 or in 5v5, but mostly 3v3, you can put Gideon with a Padme team. He will start off reducing all the enemy's turn meter, not Padme's because they can't lose turn meter, and they will gain 100% protection up, and then for every support, which of which Padme is, they get 100% protection, which is protection up, which is converted to 20 stacks of courage, and you can just start dropping really strong characters that aren't immune to max health damage, like Starkiller or Savage. So very, very good. But again, you need the Zeta. If you don't have the Zeta, you're going to have to play around with this at all. So again, depending on what you're using Gideon for, maybe you don't need it, but it's really nice to have it when you do encounter one of those bigger teams that only really Gidmate can get you out of. Next up is going to be Grief. This is very important for bounty hunters versus Lord Vader. But that being said, like, ignoring that fight entirely, this is still really good. Sweeten the deal. The part of the Zeta is dispel all debuffs on bounty hunter allies. and allies with payouts active gain tenacity up for 2 turns. This is the only AoE dispel the entire bounty hunter faction has. I guess maybe Jabba probably has one, but that's a Hutkar team, really, not really a bounty hunter team. So this is what's gonna help your boss team, what's gonna help your Aura team, what's gonna help your Mando team, whatever leadership you're using. This is really key. And if you're ever wanting to play around again with Fennec versus Lord Vader, the only way you're really gonna cleanse debuffs, unless you're taking Bam into the team, is with Grievous himself, and it is with the Zeta. It's probably top 2, top 3 for the entire bounty hunter team that you need to have, because it can just bail you out of so many different situations where debuffs are just going to be flourishing around left and right. So Grief definitely gets a spot on the list. Next up is going to be Cat. This is very similar to her unique. Not sure what you're doing if you don't have it quite yet, or if you don't have Cat. It is worth saying that her Xian one, this is okay. You eventually want to put it on, but if you're strapped for Zetas, this is probably skippable, honestly. It really just helps longer fights become shorter. But the one we're going to be talking about is the Force Sleep. Not every single time does, in my opinion, CG get the Zeta portion right. Sometimes characters will get really overpowered abilities, and then it'll start at like level 1 or level 5 or something like this. The overpowered part of this ability is in the final text. The first time Force Sleep is used during an encounter, instantly defeat target enemy. And this is your insta-kill. So even if you have JMK and he has all of his Zetas, and Cat doesn't have this one, you go and you reduce her cooldowns. This first hit, it's not gonna kill anyone. In fact, it won't even apply armor shred at that point because she won't have Xian. And you don't even get the 35% turn meter because you're using JMK. So this ability just becomes super lackluster if it doesn't immediately annihilate someone. Although it does have some very good effects depending on how you're using it and what home. But Cat definitely gets a place on the list because without it, team is a little bit worse than it is off with if she didn't have it. Next up is going to be Fulcrum, and this one I actually don't have, and I'm gonna have to start preparing myself. And one of the reasons why I'm starting to do these videos again is because you can see myself, I only have 2 Zetas really ready to go, and if I get Malgus in 2 months, I'm gonna need 1 for Fulcrum, I'm gonna need 2 for Seer, I'm gonna need I think 2 or 3 for Malgus alone. I'll probably need 1 or 2 for Cal. So this is starting to become more important because the Zetas, they're starting to keep putting multiple ones on newer characters, and if I want to be able to partake in the newer teams, I kind of have to know which ones are good. And I'm looking over Whirlwind. This one is very relevant. I myself have gone up against a Seer team with Fulcrum in it, and this attack right here has one-shot some really strong characters, like Emperor Palpatine under Starkiller himself. It one-shot my R7 Shock T, and part of the reason why it can do that is because the target can't evade, so obviously very helpful, and has 50% less armor against this attack. This is becoming more and more relevant. The more newer kits that we've seen coming out, the more we're realizing that CG keeps banking on this whole concept of defense. It wasn't always the most prevalent thing ever, but it's becoming really prevalent now, where a lot of characters, whether it be Datacrons or leaderships or whatever it is, armor is making its way back in, and having an attack that has 50% ignore when the character itself is going to be doing a massive amount of damage because of everything else that is going on does become pretty important. So Fulcrum gets added to the list, added to my list at the very minimum, but I have to see which ones that I might be able to skimp out on in that team. Next up is going to be Admiral Radice himself, and this one is a little bit easy to overlook if we go to his special here. The Zeta portion is adding Spark of the Rebellion for 3 turns, which can't be copied. That's like the whole Rogue One's thing. They get 40% offense, 30 speed, and then a bunch of other stuff. Normally, you would find all these boosts in a leadership, and CG decided to be a little bit more creative, I guess, or different, and put it all in this one ability. If you don't get it here, and you're not in GAC, the only one who even gets that buff the entire battle is Jin. So it's pretty important to apply the Zeta so that you can make sure you get it, because it's, even in GAC, I guess if you don't, you will start with it because of this. But that's where all these massive buffs come when Spark of the Rebellion is dispelled. So overall, adds a lot to his character, and really the bigger portion of his character that makes it so good and so fast and so tanky is coming from that specific ability. Next up is going to be Malgus. A little silly to talk about him, similar to Cat. If you're getting these characters, typically we encourage people to just apply all the Zetas, but if you're wanting to be really specific, this one cannot be skipped. It is so stinking good. Deal true damage equal to target enemies equal, or deal damage to target enemy equal to 40% of Darth Malgus' max health. This is the scary hit. This is the one where when gas gets alone, if Malgus' cooldowns aren't increased, he will just one-shot him. In fact, this might be the main thing that is stopping Wampa, although I don't think Wampa can ever kill him just because of the amount of dots he's giving off. But being able to increase cooldowns by 1, as well as he's going to be getting protection up. Really just everything that Malgus wants. Damage, survivability, and control is all wrapped into this one Zeta. And it's on a special, and you really can't ignore it. If you want to have Malgus at his fullest potential, it's something that you have to have. So, pretty easy to make the list, as he's a conquest character slash, I guess, overall legendary tier. And next up is going to be Hondo. Hondo, I don't really know, again, similar to some of the other guys here. I don't know what you're doing if you don't have the Zeta on Hondo yet and you're using him. The whole thing that he does that is really impressive is he puts captive on characters, and that only comes from the Zeta itself. If you don't have this, and like, let's say you even have like the Omicron down here or something, he's gonna go first and like do that ability on someone. It doesn't really matter. This is where the real threat of his entire character comes in, is the fact that it can lock up a really crucial character before the match even gets going. It's why the dash or BAM teams become so much more threatening, because if you're trying to take troopers or bounty hunters or whatever against them, and he goes and he locks up someone super important like Piet, Dark, Bosk, whatever it is, then it just hampers the entire enemy team. So it is a must if we're wanting to use him, and it really does crack the top 10 overall for special Zetas, because without it, he's not doing really as much as he could be. And next up, and really lastly, is going to be Riva. Again, another kind of legendary level character. It's a little bit unfair, I guess, to the rest, but Reckless Sweep is the one we're going to be talking about, and she could have nothing else in her kit. She could have the Inquisitor tag and just this ability, and she would have already kind of solved the Inquisitor problem. The Inquisitors have always had really good survivability and really good control. They lacked damage or a way to really just take the enemies out. Riva provided the ultimate solution to it, and it all comes down to this Zeta. If all enemies had at least 1 stack of Purge, inflict defense down and healing immunity on all enemies, which can be dispelled or resisted. So you just throw up healing immunity that can be dispelled for 2 turns on the entire team, along with defense down, just making them all super killable, because they can't keep recovering in between your hits like they love to do, especially when you get that paper cut thing going with 7th Sister and GI assisting so many times. And on top of that, you get the defense down in there too, so the offense you were lacking before, we're just undercutting that defense in a similar way that we talked about Fulcrum actually doing so in her kit. Riva does have a lot of really good other things, but that is the main thing that is changing things so drastically, that's allowing Inquisitors to just rip through teams the way that they do. So that is going to be our final list for Zetas ranking the top 10. This was our specials. Let us know if we missed any, or if there's one in particular you found to be very helpful. Until next time, stay awesome.